Broadcasting live from Shibuya, Tokyo, this is your host, Aaron Randall. Welcome to American Hot Topics. Today we're going to talk about various and new items that are hot and trending in America, things that are most commonly unknown to Japanese. Today's program is brought to you by Kotobanku.
この番組は某国立大学で英語を教えているアーロンと英語学習中のジュンがお送りいたします。
This week we continued our interview with Timothy Langley, legal expert in Japan.
アメホ番外編、日本で働くアメリカ人特集。日本で働く外国人は年々増加している。彼らは一体なぜ日本で働くのか。彼らは一体異国の地で何を思うのか。他者という鏡に今、日本の真実が映し出される。ということで、日本で働くアメリカ人特集を先週今週の2週にわたってお送りしております。第1弾の今回は、外国人で日本で最初に政治家の秘書を務めたティムさんことティモシー・ラングリーさんにアーロンがインタビューしてまいりました。ティムさんは1953年生まれ、アメリカジョージア州立大学、東北大学大学院などを卒業後、政治家中山太郎議員の秘書を務め、日本における政治家の外国人秘書第1号となる。その後、アップルジャパン、GM ジャパンのゼネラルカウンシルを務めて独立。現在、日本にある外資系企業に勤める外国人社員及びその家族の各種アドバイザーなどを務めていらっしゃいます。ということで前回はですね、ティムさんが日本に興味を持って日本語を学んだところまで伺ってまいりました。今週は続編ということで、ティムさんが東北大学大学院に入学後の日本との関わりについて伺ってまいりたいと思います。
Okay, let's take a listen. Okay, so the main goal is you wanted to get the Japanese bar.
I wanted to become a bengoshi.
Okay, yeah. And at this time, were there any other foreign bengoshi around?
None.
Oh, wow. So you wanted to be the first.
I have a little bit of a pioneer spirit in me, but I didn't want to challenge something that huge. But it did turn out that others before me had tried and failed, and others after me had also tried and failed.
Oh, I see.
And so I was one of a series who was knocking on the door. But I thought that timing and the fact that I went through the Japanese law program, maybe I could do it. And it was flatly refused. I mean, I couldn't even sit for the bar.
The main reason you met a lot of resistance was because at that time, Japan and America were kind of like fighting and competing, and they didn't want an American kind of entering the...
That's right. I think the philosophy for Japan on legal services was what we would prefer is to have a Japanese boy who has passed the bar, or maybe who is really clever and smart. He goes to the United States. He goes to law school. He passes the U.S. bar. He becomes a lawyer. He speaks English, and he comes back, and now he does that work that this young American kid with a mustache wants to do. So in the balance, we would prefer to have the Japanese individual doing that rather than some strange foreigner. I think that's the kind of thought process.
I see. Would you say that has changed in recent Japan?
No. The preference here is distinctly for the Japanese to handle it. So it's still a very, very restricted market.
On the other hand, let me ask you, was America as strict as Japan was as allowing foreigners to pass the American bar?
No.
No, they weren't.
No.
They were open to it.
Open. So here's the deal for a similarly situated Japanese fellow like me. He's finished college. Maybe he did undergraduate in law. Now he wants to become a lawyer. He tries to take the Japan bar exam and he fails. So he goes to the United States. He takes an LLM course. LLM course is usually 1 year, maybe 2 years.
Okay.
That qualifies you to then take that state bar. You take the state bar, you pass it. Usually, for a foreigner, it might take 2 times to pass it, maybe 3. But eventually you pass it. You work inside a U.S. law firm.
なるほど。特に1970年代の話ですしね。外国人だから日本で弁護士としては活躍しづらいっていうのは確かにありそうな話ですね。
Yes, absolutely.
日本に住んでて何か職業的にアメリカ人だからって区別された経験ってあります？
It's tough to say. I would say I've never really faced any true discrimination in Japan, like the same way that Tim did. But there is discrimination in the fact that Japanese kind of have an expectation for foreigners, right? And they expect them to play very specific roles in society.
例えば
Like, for example, like English teacher, maybe a model or talent, and then finally a military personnel, right? And if you don't fit one of those expectations, Japanese are kind of like, They don't understand or they can't put you into the picture.
なるほど。アメリカ人の場合は僕の知り合いでも大体英会話講師がモデルですね。で、逆にこの3つに当てはまらなかったらなんでって感じになると。
A good example is my friend was leaving an Eikaiwa school and he told the students, you know, I got a new job. And the student said, oh, you got a job at a new school? So they assumed that his new job must be an English teacher, right? But actually, he got a job at a big financial company, right? Right? So they kind of assume that you can only work within one of these 3 areas in Japan. Like in Tim's case, he wanted to become a lawyer in Japan, which doesn't fit the expectation of Japanese society, which is one of the big reasons I think he was denied.
そうですね。ということで、文部省の奨学金を取ってまで東北大学大学院で勉強したのに、弁護士になれず、挫折ですよね。
Yeah. That's tough.
しかも異国の地で。
Yeah.
で、こっからどうやってティムさんが這い上がっていくのか。
Yes, let's take a listen. I read you were recruited by Diet member Taro Nakayama to become the first non-Japanese to work in the Diet.
Yes, that's true.
So after not passing the bar exam, you kind of had this incredible opportunity to work in the Diet. Can you kind of explain how that worked out?
I applied for the bar, to sit for the bar. It was refused. I was angry, frustrated, and I didn't know what I wanted to do because I still wanted to achieve something in Japan. I wanted to learn better language skills. I wanted to absorb more of the culture, and I'd only been here for 4 years, 5 years. I somehow was introduced to a member of the Japanese parliament who was on a delegation to explain the Japanese automobile issue to the United States.
Oh.
So seeing that, I just wrote, you know, when you apply for a job in Japan, you have a form that you purchase at the Bunbogi-yasan. So I filled that out, and in my best Japanese, I wrote a brief cover letter, and I sent that to this Dietman's office. He was in the upper house. A following 5 days later, I get a same phone call from the same office. And this time it's much nicer. And the fellow on the other end says, we talked to the boss, and he's very interested in meeting you. Could you come to Tokyo? And I went and I had an interview, and essentially he hired me at that interview. And what he told me was, he says, Langley-san, I'm going to try something that has never been done before, and I think I can do it, and I'm going to give you an opportunity, and what you have to do is forget everything you learned about, and if I hire you, you work just like I would hire any Japanese kid your age. In exchange for that, I will give you an experience that will change your life. And for a 27-year-old kid who was just finishing Japanese law school and being kind of kicked around for your dreams being pretty much killed, that was a great opportunity.
So instantly, there's a bunch of controversy about you. So you probably became very popular, I imagine.
Oh, it was incredible. The newspapers, the television, they followed us around for weeks.
That's great. That's so good for you, though.
It was in all of the newspapers. Blue-eyed foreigner inside the Diet. You know, hair is on fire in Kasumigaseki. And opportunity to work in the Diet came as a result of not sitting for the bar. And when I was working inside the Diet, I met the dean of the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. He essentially invited me to apply to his program. And he said, well, Georgetown also has a law school. And if you apply to my program, I'll help you get into the law school too. And so I went to Georgetown, and after I finished law school, then of course I was a hot product because now we're in the bubble.
Okay.
And at that point in time, having a Japanese-speaking U.S. lawyer is like, you know, unheard of. And the hopscotch back to Japan was through a Japanese company located in Kyoto, a very famous Japanese manufacturing company called Murata Seisakusho. It makes buhin. And their problem was they were being investigated for dumping of their product in the US market.
いや、とうとう突き抜けましたね。
Yeah.
流れを整理すると、弁護士になれなかったという挫折の後、それでもまだ日本で成し遂げるべきことがあると。ということで、なんとか国会で働き始めて、その後、ひょんな出会いをきっかけに、US に戻って、弁護士資格を取ったら、もうその時は日本がバブルで。
Perfect timing.
要は日本語ができて、日本の政治家にコネがあって、US の法律のエキスパートなんて俺しかいないと。もうホットプロダクトって自分で言ってましたもんね。
Yes, it gave him a huge competitive advantage. Right? So kind of going back to the main theme of why do foreigners work in Japan? You know, if you're someone like Tim and you have expertise in such a niche area, Japan's the only place for you to work. And you know, people who are able to find their niche are very respected. It's almost as if everyone is looking for their niche. And when you finally find it, it's like, I did it.
もう粘りがちというか。
So kind of a Japanese famous expression is continuing is the most important thing.
そう、継続は力なりですね。
Yeah.
だからここまで来るとアメリカ人が日本で働くことっていうか、人が生きるということみたいなそうなっちゃいますけどね今回たまたま日本とアメリカという関係性でこういう話をしてますけど、別に本質は変わらないというか、日本人がアメリカで働いて何かそのスペシャルなものになるだとか、別に中国でも韓国でもどこでもいいんですけど。
Yeah, of course, it's not just limited to foreigners working in Japan. This is more of a global thing that occurs whenever you can kind of break into a very niche market.
はい、ということで2週連続で日本で働くアメリカ人特集をお送りしましたが、いかがでしたでしょうか。反響があれば第2弾第3弾と不定期にやってまいりたいと思います。さてここからの時間はいつも What's Hot What's Trending なのですが、今回はお休みしてティムさんへのインタビューで他に面白かった部分をピックアップしたいと思います。題して日本とアメリカの訴訟感覚の違い。
Check it out.
But sometimes the problem that you have, you can solve yourself if you just calm down and think it through and don't react. Don't react the way that your emotions tell you to react. So sometimes it's just a conversation. My preference always is, and it has always been, to solve problems without actually getting into a fight. There are going to be differences of opinion. There are going to be competing emotions or competing objectives. But in this country, you really don't want to get into a fight. You don't want to employ a bengoshi. You don't want to go to court. It's just not the right thing to do. People sometimes unfairly criticize Americans as being eager to sue, or they're too aggressive, or they always are complaining or criticizing. And to a certain extent, that's true. I mean, our country and our culture is less than 300 years old. I mean, we still haven't figured out a lot of the things that older cultures have mastered. In Japan, about 90% of the cases that are brought to court, I'm going to sue you, and I've filed the papers, and I've hired a lawyer, and you've hired a lawyer. That situation, about more than 90% of those are settled out of court before the judge makes a decision.
Wow, 90%.
More than 90%.
Do you know in America? Do you know the percentage in America?
Well, it's a very different comparison. So in the United States, you can sue somebody relatively cheaply. There are lots of lawyers. They're not that expensive. There are instances where you don't need to have a lawyer to file the suit. And it's kind of a part of American culture and business. So when somebody says, I'm going to sue you, it's not as serious as it is here. My advice is always, don't say, I'm going to sue you, or I'm going to talk to a lawyer. If you're focused on a fight and you're focused on resolving that to your benefit, sometimes it's better to keep those emotions in the background.
Be cool.
You need to be cool. And the Japanese also, they say, you're supposed to hide your talons. You're supposed to hide your claws. And if you are going to sue somebody, then just sue them. Don't tell them you're going to sue them. Because in my experience, usually when you say that, it's just bluster.
What about stress in your line of work?
Well, it's like a medical doctor. A surgeon, he might throw up the first couple of times as an intern, but as he becomes better, he doesn't even really notice the blood. And for me, it's, I can see things, I can sense things, I can hear how people speak and talk and the words that they select, and I can interpolate from there a lot of different things that my ears just tune to. So it's kind of like that. People wonder how I deal with the stress, and I don't have stress.
Yeah, I love that Japanese saying to hide your talons.
脳ある鷹は爪を隠す。
Yes, I love that saying, right? I wish more Americans would follow that saying.
みんな爪出しまくり。
Yeah, people stick out their talons in America, right? And a really interesting point that Tim brought up, America is very much a suing culture, right? And a good example of that is the fact that if you get in a car accident or have a minor accident, you have to file the accident with the police, right? And a lot of times, lawyers will come after you. They'll hunt you down and say, hey, I heard you got in an accident.
チャンスだと。
Yes, let's sue the other guy.
救急車の音が聞こえたらついていくみたいな話聞いたことありますよ。
Yeah, it's that bad. Yeah, lawyers are aggressive in America, right? The law system there. Another really funny thing is a lot of these accidents or cases in America where people sue are called small claims, right? It's in small claim court. And actually, there's a lot of American television shows where they kind of make entertainment out of the court system.
何でもテレビにするな。
Yeah. Americans are good at that, right? Putting everything on TV.
Shark Tank しかり。
Yeah, like Shark Tank, right? So, for example, right? Somebody breaks your front door or window, right? So, in America, a lot of times, the guy who broke it might not pay you for the damages. So, you got to go to court. So there's actually a really popular show called Judge Judy, where they have a lot of these kind of small claims come into Judge Judy's courtroom, and they're fighting back and forth.
はいはい。まあもう弁護士の数が多いって言いますもんね。アメリカだと100万人ぐらいいて、
there's a lot of lawyers in America.
日本だと3万人ぐらいって言うんですけどね。
So America has 30 times as many lawyers as Japan.
まあそれはなんかさっきのさティムさんが日本では弁護士になれなかったって話だったけど、まあアメリカ人はもう誰だって州のね試験に受かればなれるんでしょ。
Yes, if you pass the state bar exam.
そういう風通しの良さっていうところもあるとは思うんですけどね。
Absolutely. Probably becoming a bengoshi or lawyer in Japan is much more difficult than becoming a lawyer in America. But as with all things in America, it depends on the state.
まああとやっぱりなんかもう多文化っていうかいろんな人がいるからもういろいろ話すのめんどくさいみたいな感じなんでしょ。
Yeah, there's just so many different people in America. It's kind of hard to get along, and a lot of people end up employing a lawyer for that matter, right?
多様性がある分ちょっと調整コストが高いってところでしょうね。
Thank you for listening to American Hot Topics. The music in this program was brought to you by Aaron Randall and Mateen Jahanmuri.